All right, thank you and welcome everyone. We really appreciate you being here for our first town hall of 2026. This will be one of many events that we'll be hosting with candidates, not only our congressional candidates and our statewide candidates, but also local candidates, House and Senate candidates for the Ohio legislature. 2026 is going to be a crucial year, and you all know that. And that's why you're here today, and that's why we're doing this, is because even though it's January, and thank goodness we have no snow here in Geauga County, we do know that it's difficult for people to come out when the weather is not pleasant and when it's Geauga County, being the snow capital of the state, so outside of Ashtabula. So I do want to welcome you all. I'm Janet Carson. I am the chair of Geauga County Democrats, and I'm also the chair of the 88 Democratic County chairs for the state of Ohio. So I wear quite a few hats, and because of my relationship across the state with all the county chairs and with the candidates and with the Ohio Democratic Party, it's very fortunate for me that we are able to bring excellent candidates like Allison and Brian here today to talk with you. Not only will we have them doing a 90-minute panel on the Secretary of State office and the importance of running for Secretary of State and the importance of the office, but we will have John Kulowitz, our candidate for Attorney General, will be here after the panel, and he will be speaking to you and taking questions about what he plans to do with the Attorney General's office and how he can make it much more effective to protect our voting rights, our personal rights, and every right that we value as citizens of the United States. So I want to tell you a little bit about the program today. It is going to be over right around 1 o'clock, and we will have our first speaker, Justice William O'Neill, will be here. Bill is our candidate for Congressional District 14, which is what you are all in, and he's running against David Joyce. So we are happy to have him here today. After Justice O'Neill speaks, Senator Kent Smith will be doing a legislative update on all the draconian bills and the terrible things coming out of Columbus and what's planned for the very near future and how that's going to affect all of us and how we can participate in order to try to make them listen to us a little bit. Then we will have our panel with Allison and Brian, and we will have set questions, and then we'll have questions from the audience. And then after the panel is over, we will have John Kulowitz speak, and then we will have Representative Patterson speak about education and school vouchers and an update on those issues in the state of Ohio. And then finally, we will have our local candidates and other candidates that are here tonight introduce themselves and say a word for a minute so that you can get to know them and support them. And then we will have a general discussion and questions and answers from the floor for candidates or anyone. I can answer questions, Tracy can answer questions, Tom can answer questions, anything that you want to bring up, anything you want to talk about. So before we start, I want to remind everybody that we have snacks and coffee. They're here, they're free. If you would make a donation, that would help us offset the costs of today. There are index cards being circulated, and they will be questions for the panels. And there are petitions everywhere for you to sign, so please sign the petition so our candidates can get on the ballot. And before I introduce Justice O'Neill, I would like to ask everyone to stand for a moment of silence for what happened in Minnesota the other day. Thank you very much. Tracy?
Tioga County, look at you. Nice job. Way to come out. You got to start bringing our kids, all right? Us ladies are all knitting age. I have the honor of introducing a man who I have become very good friends with. He is deeply rooted in Northeast Ohio, graduate of Cleveland Heights High School, where then after he entered the military and earned the Bronze Star. That wasn't enough, so then he went to law school and became a very, very successful attorney. And then, again, if you know this man, you know he is relentless no matter his age. He is a bundle of energy. He went and got his RN and became a registered nurse. Yay! So, the only thing I can say as I travel around the state, a lot of you remember the program Cheers. Everyone knows his name. I would like to introduce to you former Justice Bill O'Neill.
Janet, thank you. Thank you for that moment of silence. I think everybody in this room is devastated by what we saw this week. Is this microphone working? Can anybody hear me? Okay.
No.
Okay. Well, then let's get rid of it. Okay. Hey, my name is Bill O'Neill, and I'm the Democrat that's going to send David Joyce into retirement. Janet has given me 5 minutes very generously. I'm retired military, and I know what that means. Be concise, be brief, and be seated. There's actually 3 of me, and I hope you hear about one of them that you like. I'm a retired Lieutenant Colonel, United States Army. I served in Vietnam, where I was awarded the Bronze Star, and the governor appointed me to Ohio's Veterans Hall of Fame. You now know all you need to know about my military background, except for one. I was the commanding officer of the National Guard unit in Paynesville when I was in law school. I know that's 150 well-armed people. I know what National Guard people can do, I know what they cannot do, and I know what they should never do. And that's being put into the situation as pawns in a political struggle. It is wrong to use National Guard members to terrorize their fellow citizens. It is wrong, it's unconstitutional, it's dangerous, and will lead to tragedy. Governor DeWine, if you ever hear from me, bring them home today. I'm also a registered nurse. You know, and we'll get to that in a minute, but I'm also a retired justice on the Ohio Supreme Court, and you put me there. I served with distinction, I believe, for 5 years, and I know something about the law. As a young lawyer in Geneva, I thought that immunity was a terrible idea. I should be able to sue the government anytime I want. When I was an assistant attorney general for the state of Ohio, you know, I said, no, you cannot. This is what immunity means. Public servants have immunity. And when I was a justice on the Ohio Supreme Court, I was able to write decisions clarifying what governmental immunity means. And I want to leave you with something you can take home today. Because here is my message to J.D. Vance and the Yale Law School. There is no such thing as absolute immunity for a police officer. And then we get to the subject I like the most. It's my most recent one. I went to nursing school at age 50. I had the privilege of working for the Cleveland Clinic Foundation in the pediatric emergency department. I did that for 12 years, and I learned a couple things that I think are important today. If any of you at any time show up at an emergency room, you're going to be seen with or without regard to whether you have insurance. Nobody cares. I probably saw 10,000 kids, never had any idea who had insurance. Why is that possible? Why can the hospitals give away all that free care? Because Medicaid pays them at the end of the month because we as a society think that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Well, David Joyce and Donald Trump just took $800 billion out of the Medicaid budget so they could fund tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires. That is fundamentally wrong, and it has to stop. But in closing, let me tell you what I'm really here to say to you, and it's important. Are you aware that 40% of Americans have government-sponsored health insurance? 40%. Medicare, Medicaid, military. I am certainly not here to criticize that. My Dr. Root is here, and he knows I'm a recipient. I know exactly what I'm talking about. But here's what's wrong in America that we in this room can change. Medicare for all is the only answer that makes any sense. And here's why I say that with impunity and on so much certainty. 60% of Americans are paying for Medicare and are not permitted to participate in the program. That's just fundamentally wrong. It's wrong, it's unconstitutional, and it has to change. Now, when we're talking about fairness, here you go, I'm going to close with this. This is important. 3 days ago, David Joyce departed from his lifelong commitment to stop affordable care. He's been voting against it for 10 years. A couple days ago, he broke ranks with Donald Trump, and he voted to extend the Medicare expansion, or the uniform ACA, Americans with, Obamacare. Hey, wait a minute. I'm just going to say it, Obamacare. That's what it is. He voted, and I'm going to tell you why David Joyce voted for Obamacare extension 3 days ago. You know why? Because he knows that Bill O'Neill is running for Congress, and I'm going to put him out.
All right, I think we can get this to work, because we probably need it. Can you hear me back there now? No, Brand, you need to stick it back on, okay? So while we're doing that, I'm just going to do a very brief introduction of Senator Ken Smith. Many of you probably see Senator Smith on Facebook with his weekly updates of the legislature and what's happening in Columbus. If you don't see those on Facebook or on Twitter, I guess it is, or Instagram, please sign up for that because they're so informative. And besides that, they're a heck of a lot of fun. Here we go. They're a heck of a lot of fun. And Ken's been a friend for a long time, and he's also a lot of fun. So without further ado, Senator Ken Smith.
Hi, everyone. I need to make Bill O'Neill's remarks for him now, since the microphone is now on. Just kidding, but we'll be happy to do that. All right, so let's just do a quick review of things. So Project 2025 will ruin your life. And Project 2026 is the plot to steal the midterm elections. So I'm going to give you a bit of a review of some of the voter suppression legislation that has been passed in Columbus. But you all need to know, Columbus is a 4-alarm fire right now. But DC is a 5-alarm fire. These are critical times. These are, dare I say, scary times. and we need you all involved in this. And I'm going to try to give you a bit of a story following my brief legislative update about how you all saved abortion rights. But to get into it, it's a new year, but it's the same old lying Republican Party, especially when it comes to voter suppression. And voter suppression can take a variety of forms. It can take the form of gerrymandering, which currently exists, which we tried to stop with issue 1 in 2024, and the only reason it didn't pass was deceitful ballot language. The other way that voter suppression can take place is with insanely high contribution limits to politicians. Currently in Ohio, you can contribute up to $16,000 to a statewide candidate, to any candidate running for state office. That's 4 times higher than the federal limit. And also, I think they've determined that if you're a child of 8, you can legally give that amount of money. So again, just think about, the wealthy households that perhaps, 2 breadwinners, 2 kids, maybe under the age of 13, and how much money that can contribute to the system. So, but the other way that voter suppression takes effect is through the laws regarding who can legally cast a ballot and how that process can unfold. And Mike DeWine is infamous for saying one thing and doing the opposite. And I'm going to use Mike DeWine's own words to try to build a case for you that he's more beholden to trying to suppress your legal right to cast a vote than he is to telling you the truth. I'm also going to quote from another prominent GOP executive in government, the current president. So, but let's establish Mike DeWine's pattern of lying on this topic. A few years ago, we had a huge fight in the Ohio General Assembly over House Bill 458, which was a significant form of voter suppression. It did a variety of things. I'm going to highlight just 4 of those. Number 1, it eliminated the final day of early in-person voting, the Monday before Election Day at County Board of Elections. It also changed the deadline to apply for an absentee ballot to 7 days before the election from what was 3 days. It also eliminated the August special election. That didn't last long. And it reduced, and this is the detail I want you to pay attention to, it reduced the number of days that absentee ballots postmarked before Election Day could arrive at the County Board of Elections and still be legally counted from 10 days to 4 days. That's what happened in 2023. And what I want you to hear is what Mike DeWine said when he signed that piece of legislation. He signed it on January 6th, 2023. Interesting day to sign a day of voter suppression legislation. But when he signed it, and these are his words, he said, "I believe with the enactment of the new election integrity provisions in House Bill 458, this matter should be settled. And I do not expect to see any further statutory changes to Ohio voting procedures while I am the governor." Do you think that lasted long? So let me read to you now from our glorious president. On August 18th, 2025, Trump posted, quote, "I'm going to begin to lead a movement to get rid of mail-in ballots." Later in the same post, he said, "We are now the only country in the world that uses mail-in voting. All others gave it up because of massive voter fraud encountered." Actually, 34 nations use some form of postal voting, which is a number slightly larger than 0. But, maybe Vance will tell him that. But in response to Trump's demands, less than 2 months later, Ohio Republicans in the Ohio Senate introduced Senate Bill 293 on October 14th, 2025, which immediately got fast-tracked, and just 3 weeks later, on November 5th, it was passed by the Senate, and then went over to the House, and was passed in the House. Governor DeWine signed it. We have a quote from him, by the way, later on. But again, what I want you to keep in mind is Trump says something in August, GOP senators in Columbus immediately act on it, but they also, when they introduced it was critical October 14th, 2025. It got passed November 5th. You know what's really hard to do? It's really hard to get directors of county boards of elections in the final few weeks of October and the first week of November to come down and testify on a piece of election-related legislation because they're too busy administering the election that's going on in that moment. That was intentional timing on their part. This is cross-party, this is policy that's being run across the Republican Party. So that's what I wanted you to keep in mind. Jen Miller of the League of Women Voters summarized the problem of Senate Bill 293 this way, because again, this was one of the critical elements of 293, and there was a variety of things, was it took the days that legally cast ballots could be received at the Board of Elections if they're postmarked before from 4 days to 0. Jen Miller said, our concern with Senate Bill 293 would be that many votes would not count for something outside of the voter's control, which is the speed of the mail, which we know has also been subject to federal scrutiny and the fact that the mail is slowing down. So again, DeWine at that point, and let's remember, absentee voting actually makes election day easier to run because it reduces lines and makes polling places less busy. Absentee voting was expanded in Ohio following the 2004 election, where we saw voting lines oftentimes lasting over 4 hours in length. It is important to keep in mind that when the ballot is cast is the important thing, not when it is postmarked and received. Anyway, so a few weeks back, so Senate Bill 293 reaches the governor's desk, surprise, surprise, he signs it. The Ohio Capitol Journal described it this way. He said, despite an outpouring of opposition from voting rights advocates, DeWine codified Senate Bill 293, a measure rushed through the legislature with only one hearing in the Ohio House, and it will change nearly every aspect of voting by mail, voter registration, and provisional ballot processing. You ready for the quote from DeWine at this point? He said, as he signed Senate Bill 293, he said, quote, normally, I would veto a repeal of this 4-day grace period, and frankly, that's what I wish I could do. And again, he's the governor. You know, he can veto this. And, you know, he wishes that he could. What, is he going to get another chance? So again, he's more committed to suppressing legal votes than he is to telling the truth. And this is what a prominent, longtime State House journalist said, Darrell Rowland. He posted this tweet. He said, quote, Governor Mike DeWine goes along with Donald Trump, because that's where this originated, and the GOP supermajority to reduce the number of days Ohioans have to cast an absentee ballot despite zero evidence of substantial harm from allowing legal ballots cast before Election Day to count if they arrive up to 4 days afterwards, unquote. Okay, so, but now I want to, how much time do I have?
5:29.
Okay, good. So because this story is going to take a minute to give it its proper, to be able to tell all the elements of it. But I want to take you back to how abortion rights were saved in Ohio and how the role of protesters saved abortion rights. So I need to take you back to December 13th and December 14th, 2002. Because what happened on June 24th, 2002? Dobbs decision. Abortion rights, you know, get repealed all across the nation. Less than a week later, the 6-week abortion ban gets put in place in Ohio. And then we have things like 10-year-olds going to Indiana for proper medical care. Okay, so the other thing that is happening during the fall of 2022 is abortion right groups are coming together. They're figuring out what's going to be the language. They're trying to figure out how to get signatures, et cetera, et cetera. The Republicans are doing the same thing. They see what's going to happen, and they're trying to figure out a strategy to stop abortion rights from being written into the Constitution. And what do? They come up with this, hey, 60% idea. And so the fight that occurred in the Ohio House, December 13th, December 14th, 2022, was the Republicans trying to put a joint resolution number 4, House Joint Resolution number 6, on the ballot, which would have gotten the 60% issue before voters in May of 2023, because the Republicans are trying to stop the ballot issue from coming before Ohioans in November of 2023. So if they can change the victory standard before that, then they can hopefully prevent abortion rights from being codified in the Ohio Constitution. And who showed up that day? Protesters, all kinds of protesters in the Ohio House chamber. And they shouted, and they had banners, and they made a lot of noise, and they eventually all got thrown out. But it spooked the Republicans. These were the final 2 days for the legislature to put this issue on the ballot. So they didn't do it on December 13th. So we came back December 14th. In between those two times, Brian Stewart, who's one of the worst people in Columbus, wrote a memo to the Republicans, and it got leaked, and the press ran with it. So we have one more day of legislative session, and Brian Stewart's memo has been leaked. And in the memo that he sent to the Ohio House Republicans, he essentially said, we need to stand tall in this moment. We need to put this issue before voters because we're trying to stop two things: abortion rights and gerrymandering. And he put it out there. And so with that, we go to the floor for the final time. I think session started at about 3 o'clock that day. And we went until 6:15 in the morning. The longest legislative day in anyone's memory. Admittedly, no one really keeps track of that. But the old timers that were there were like, we've never gone past 2 in the morning, or whatever. And Ohio House Democrats, and I was in the House at that point, we fought every issue we could. We argued and argued and argued, and we were trying to run out the clock. And every issue that came up, we made our speeches, we kept going, etc. And what happened was some of their older members started to just peel away. Because the issue needed to pass with 60% of the vote. They eventually brought this issue up at about midnight or 1 in the morning. And it passed, but it didn't have 60% of the vote. And so with that, it passed, but it failed. And so it doesn't go on the ballot in May. They come back the next General Assembly. I see you 1 minute. We're getting there. Okay, not yet. We see they try to bring the May election back in the early part of 2023, but they don't have enough time, and then they do what we all realize they do. They pass legislation to put the August issue back on the ballot so they can then pass this issue in August. That created a huge stink, and we got a lot of press out of that, but the August issue, but it comes up in August, and we're going to be voting on it in August. Now, what happens in the odd year of elections is before July 1st, we do a lot of things. We have to pass the budget. The State House Press Corps, and hear me on this, the State House Press Corps is really good, but they're trying to cover a ton of stuff. And so they can't write all those articles. That was part of the strategy. If it would have been on the ballot in May, they could have snuck it by us. By putting it up in August, what did the State House Press Corps have to do after the budget was passed? Nothing. Except for write the story over and over and over again that your vote of 59% might not be able to change the Constitution. And everybody figured it out. You might remember every former governor and every former attorney general came out opposed to the August 60% changing the Constitution because it was the only thing Ohioans were hearing about for 5 weeks after the budget passed. And that does not happen if protesters do not show up on December 13th and shut the chamber down. So Brian Stewart then writes the memo that gets leaked and allows to the Ohio House fighting as long as we did till 6:15 in the morning to stop the August issue from being put on the ballot in May when the attention could not be paid to it. Which is to say, you all in this room saved Ohio abortion rights because you all in this room showed up to protest. So as we move forward with all of this voter suppression, as the Project 2026 goal is to steal your vote, to steal the midterm, you all need to know that every bit of resistance is worth everything that the future of this country depends on. So please, moving forward, please continue to resist, be engaged. Your tiniest efforts can change the future of this state and this country. Thank you very much.